Former 5-star recruit Nazir Ishmael has blossomed here as a junior, and the standout receiver looks the part of a first-round draft pick. But with his likely departure this offseason to the NFL, we're going to have to find a replacement. Insert Skylar Matlock, a 4-star from Wheeling Central Catholic in Wheeling, West Virginia. He's the 35th ranked player in the nation, the highest ranked player on the recruiting board, and a guy who we think can come in right away as a true freshman and help replace some of the production that we'll be losing from Nazir Ishmael. At 6'5", he can run just about every route in the route tree. He's got impressive athletic traits at his size. He can really separate for a bigger guy, but he's also someone who you can throw it up to in a contested catch situation. I think he fully looks the part of being one of the top receivers in the country. He probably should be a 5-star recruit, and he's a guy who certainly will have a real shot to get playing time for his next year. That is, if he chooses to commit. Skylar Matlock is one of the 35 players we'll be going over today in our annual recruiting special as we take a look at our recruiting board, dissect some of the talent who we are going after. And since this is our bye week, week 7, we will do a regular week across the nation like any other episode, going through all the notable games across the country. So we're roughly halfway through the season. Currently, our team is 3-3. Atop the polls sit Ohio State, SMU, Miami, and Texas Tech in the top 4 spots. The big storyline this past week has to be Michigan. They blew out Minnesota, but redshirt senior quarterback Elijah Pyle suffered a season-ending leg injury. Redshirt freshman Kason Wood, a transfer from the rival Ohio State, will be the starting quarterback. And he was supposed to be the starter next year with Pyle gone, but the Kason Wood era begins a little bit earlier than Michigan certainly would have hoped for. In terms of the Heisman watch, Parker Zasko, Brian Maddie, and Amir Anthony all in the top 4. It looks like it might be the year of receivers. Tyree Wells, the projected number 1 pick from SMU, currently in 3rd. And then Ryan Loxley, the first-year starter at quarterback for Georgia, is in 5th. As for us, as I mentioned, we're 500. So far, we've beaten the teams who we should beat. But every time we've played against a really good team, a playoff contender, we've lost. Granted, we only lost by 4 against Texas Tech. Got blown out by Miami, only scored 3 points after the opening possession. But last episode against Clemson, we took it to double overtime with the Tigers losing 44-38. Nick Eberle played really well for Clemson. He completed like 80% of his throws. But I think the big takeaway from this game is I think we've got something here at quarterback with Cam Kingsbury. Sure, he was inefficient in the second half, but I don't really think it was his fault. I think the pass protection really let him down. Kingsbury was only sacked twice, but he was able to evade a lot of pressure, throw out of a lot of sacks, and turn those into incompletions. Defensively, we struggled at the line of scrimmage as well. We had 2 sacks of our own, but even though the 2 teams had the same amount of sacks, it was pretty clear which side was generating a lot more pressure than the others. And right now, we've lost against 3 playoff teams because we have not been able to hang at the line of scrimmage. Chris Mickens is continuing to produce, and Nazir Ishmael had another crazy game, 8 for 160 and 2. I will say, though, Clemson doubled him in the third quarter onwards, and he did not get the ball again from the halfway point of the third quarter through the rest of the game. Judy Esafu played very well, too. 7 for $135 and 2 scores. I have a feeling both Ishmael and Yesufu will be high picks in this year's draft, and to briefly spoil the upcoming Browns episode with the prospect profiles, both of those guys will be projected pretty highly in this year's class. So we have 6 games down, 6 to go. We still have a tough schedule coming up. 3 straight games at home with ECU, North Carolina, and Louisville. No gimmies there. ECU is one of the better group of 5 teams. North Carolina is undefeated, and Louisville beat us last year. And quarterback Judah Hudson's got a lot better. Then we've got Duke, number 2 SMU, and then Virginia, who's already surpassed their win total from last year. They look a lot better. In terms of the stats, of course, Ace Morgan was the starting quarterback for the first 3 games. It's been Cam Kingsbury since. Morgan is better in terms of pretty much every stat, in terms of completion percentage, touchdown percent, interception percentage, yards per attempt, quarterback rating, etc. However, it's clear watching these guys that there just seems to be more command of the offense and more consistency with Cam Kingsbury at the helm. I just feel like right now, with those 2 guys in their current stage of development, Cam is better. Chris Mickens, of course, is having a great year. He's towards the top of the country in terms of explosive run rate. Nearly 10% of his carries have gone for at least 20 yards. Mark Armstrong, though, right next to him in terms of yardage. It seems like the Mark Armstrong, Chris Mickens saga, if you will, in the transfer portal ended up being a win for everybody. But Mickens is a senior, and I'm not so sure we have our long-term RB1 on the roster. That could be a position of need in the recruiting cycle. Wide receiver is kind of a similar story. Nazir Ishmael has been awesome this year. He's averaging 120 yards per game, and he has scored in all 6 games so far this year. Currently, he is 3rd in college football in terms of receiving yards. Only Brian Maddie, who's 2nd for the Heisman Trophy, along with Raymond Ferreira, have more. That's it. Then it's Ishmael. He has more than Parker Zasco, the Heisman frontrunner. Granted, by 1, but it's still more. Ishmael's having a great year, but we haven't gotten enough from everybody else. Nobody else has more than 200 receiving yards and 2 combined receiving touchdowns. 2. Now, I will say, I think Daniel Caffrey's really come along in recent weeks. I think Kingsbury's got a good thing going with Xavier Baker, but I want more from some of the others. I want more from Trevor Adams. I want more from Jack Stesko. The offensive line has not played well against great opponents, and we still have SMU amongst others the rest of the way. Defensively, it's been kind of weird. The pass rush has been very balanced. Nobody has more than 3, but we've got a bunch of guys in there. I still don't think the pass rush has been very good or very consistent. I think the strength of the defense this year has been the secondary. At corner, Elihu Gold has had a great senior year, along with Smoke Lewis on the other side. Justice Watkins at safety, joined by the transfer Mitch Myrie. The secondary was not very good against Clemson. That was their worst game of the year. But that's really been the only bad game I feel like we've gotten out of the DBs so far this season. As we look at our recruiting board, I like the group of players we have here, and I'm excited to introduce a lot of them to you guys for the very first time. We looked at some of these names earlier in the year. Obviously, we didn't take much of a deep dive, but of course, managing our recruiting restrictions that I would have gone over in the opening episode, it's been a little bit challenging because we can't add any more 5 stars. We can only add 1 at the beginning of the year, and we ended up losing that race. We can't add any 4 stars after our first game. We don't have any commitments just yet. I think during last year's recruiting special, we probably had a few guys signed on at that point. This year, that's not the case. Our recruiting seems to be moving a little bit slower, but I think that'll change. I think we could get some commitments as early as later in this episode. So recruiting can be a little tricky in terms of finding the right positions that we need, because watching Virginia Tech through the first 6 games of the year, it's clear that our strengths lie on the outside. At wide receiver on offense, at running back on offense, and at corner on defense. However, those are the positions we're most focused on. Our trench play has been inconsistent, but we've got a lot of young guys, and we've recruited very well on the offensive and defensive line recently. I cannot say the same for running back, wide receiver, corner. So if you like the flashier positions, I think this class is for you. Of course, we have scouting restrictions on some of these guys, especially the players from farther away, but we do have film on all 35 guys here, and I'm excited to introduce them to you once and for all. We start at quarterback, which we're in an interesting spot given that I like Cam Kingsbury a lot. The 4-star true freshman has made 3 starts. He's played in 5 games. Of course, he has elite development. So I think we may very well be in a good spot for the next few years at the quarterback position. We also have Ace Morgan, who's played. He has high skill caps, and I certainly wouldn't rule him out either. Despite that, though, I still have 2 additional quarterbacks on the board. I think it's always good to go after some in case Cam Kingsbury or Ace Morgan don't work out. I do want contingency plans, and I like the 2 guys, a couple of 4 stars who we've got here. We'll start with Jorge Padrino, 6'1", 195 pounds from Acton, Massachusetts, and St. John's Preparatory School, the alma mater of Cleveland Browns guard Zach Zinner. Padrino is the modern-day quarterback in the sense that he plays at his best out of structure. This is someone who can dance around in the pocket, evade pressure, and I think his traits are good enough to where he'll be a good player at the next level. He wants to play right away. He's got some smaller schools like Syracuse, UConn, and South Florida currently in the mix. Then there's Matthew Shelley from Brubaker Technology Magnet High School in Montgomery, Alabama. For a while, I thought it'd be a 2-horse race with us and Georgia Tech. The Yellow Jackets seem to have the edge. But Ole Miss has entered the picture, and they have a lot more recruiting resources than both of those. So we're definitely going to have Shelley come in for a visit during our 3-game home stretch. I haven't decided which game yet, but it is definitely going to be soon. 6 foot, 204 pounds, definitely a dual-threat quarterback. He's one of the better rushing QBs in the class. I think he fits our offensive scheme pretty well. He's got a lively arm, though. He makes impressive throws like that one on the run. And similar to Padrino, I really think he fits the modern prototype that college teams look for at the quarterback position. Let's move over to running back now. We've got 3 guys on the board. We went after a lot towards the beginning of the year. We lost out on some of those guys, but we do have 3 players here. Running back is an interesting spot for us because I love Chris Mickens. I think he's great. He's been as good, if not better, than advertised out of the transfer portal, but he's a senior. He's only here for 1 year. Esteban Cabrera and Ashwell Virgo are good complementary running backs, but I don't know if either of them can be an RB1. Amir Alba, 4-star recruit. He's played a little bit this year. We only have 1 more game in terms of his eligibility. He's already played in 3 contests this year, so we're running out of chances to see him. And then fullback Nick Morris, he's a freshman. We've got him down pat for the next few years as well. So we'll start with Javante Montague from Potomac Falls High School, a local kid in Sterling, Virginia. The alma mater of Panthers wide receiver Jalen Coker. Cokeheads, where you at? Montague, to me, is a well-rounded back. He's not the fastest, but I would say he's quicker than fast. I think his footwork is really impressive, and he can speed up rather quick. I think he's going to be a good player on 3rd downs as well, but I'd like to see him bulk up a little bit, and he's got the frame at 6'1", 190. Jeremy Campbell, it's a 3-horse race with us, Georgia Tech, and Auburn. He's a lot smaller than Montague. He's 5'10", 164 pounds. He is tiny. When you look at players with that size or lack thereof, you're expecting a smaller scat back type who maybe isn't necessarily a workhorse, but a guy who can be an RB2 and get a handful of touches a game. And I think that's a perfect description of Jeremy Campbell. The Hueytown High School standout isn't necessarily the archetype of running back that I think we need. I think we need a between-the-tackles tough runner. But in the case of Campbell, I think he's really talented. I think he's got a unique skill set. And I want to get him on the team and figure out how we can get him on the field. Worry about it later, after we land him. I think Jarrell Casey is more of a traditional back like Montague. 6'1", 192 pounds, from Bloomingdale, Georgia, and Jenkins High School. Not a lot of big schools are going after him. It seems like he wants to go to a big-time program. He missed the start of the year with an injury. He's only played 1 game so far. He did look quite good in that 1 game, though, and I think it's only a matter of time until the bigger schools start to go after him. So because of that, I imagine we're going to try to accelerate our efforts in terms of recruiting him over the next couple of weeks, because I think he's a guy who could easily contend to be an RB1 as soon as maybe at some point next year even, who knows. So 3 intriguing players at running back, 3 very different players as we move over to the wide receiver position where there are a lot. We currently have 6 on the board, and for much of the year this number was higher. It might seem a little bit weird because wide receiver has been a strength of ours this year, but as I look at the long-term outlook of the position, it's kind of bleak. Nazir Ishmael has been a superstar this year, and coming into the year, I figured this would probably be his last year here. Either he plays really well and enters the draft, he plays really well, but not well enough to enter the draft, but he still wants to go to a bigger school anyway, or he plays poorly and wants to get up the hell out of here. Clearly, as we've seen, this guy's an NFL player. He has the NFL skill set, he has the NFL athleticism, he's going to the league. I think we're going to get 1 more year out of Daniel Caffrey, though, even though his usage has been inconsistent. I think he's gotten better. But then after that, senior, and a bunch of lower-rated freshmen. This is not a position we've recruited very well at. We got a couple guys last year in the transfer portal, but they're obviously upperclassmen. We went after a number of 4-stars at wide receiver a season ago. We weren't overly lucky. We didn't get any of them. I certainly think there's a chance one of, say, Malachi Lavelle, Tuzar Camper, Kalen Handy, or one of the guys we recruited this year ends up taking that leap, but I wouldn't bank on it. Jack Stesko at tight end has been a disappointment. I definitely want to get him the ball more. I think he's really physically talented. In terms of long-term starters, I would definitely keep an eye on Gideon Zavala, the true freshman who's being redshirted. He's a guy who could contend to be the starter next year. So as I mentioned, we have 6 wide receivers on the board. I would certainly hope we would land 2 or 3 of these guys, and I see a real world where 2 or 3 of these guys could easily play for us as early as next year. Skylar Matlock is obviously the big name. We've already talked about him. 6'5", only 192 pounds. He's a little bit slim, but I think we can get him to bulk up a little bit. He's already someone who is physical at the catch point, though. Even though he's wiry and slim, he's physical, going up for the football, making tough plays on defensive backs. As I mentioned earlier, I like the athletic traits that come with his size. I think he runs the route tree really well. I think he's a pretty good separator. I really think you're looking at a guy who in 3 to 4 years could be a pretty high NFL draft pick. We do have the slight lead on Matlock, but NC State and West Virginia are both firmly in the mix. It's going to be a very competitive battle for him. I'm certainly hoping it ends up being us. And while I do like these other receivers below him, I do think they're all a tier down from Matlock, but I still hope we can get at least one or two of these guys, and I think any one of them could easily compete to be a starter for our team as early as next year. We'll start with Kiki Edebali from Daytona Beach, Florida, and Seabreeze High School. Right now, it looks like Florida and Florida State will be our biggest competition. We're in second behind the Gators, Arkansas in the mix as well. 6'5", 211, really impressive separator at his size. The first thing you'll notice is that he doesn't always play like he's 6'5", and I mean that in a good way. Some 6'5" receivers are clunkier. They're contested specialists. Not Edebali. He's a true wide receiver who can do a little bit of everything. He can go up for the jump balls, but he can get open on his own as well. Khalil Kaufman, it's a 2-horse race with us in Missouri. It is neck and neck. 6'1", 190 pounds from Timber Creek High School in Keller, Texas. He's listed as a gadget archetype. I do see him as a guy who has a well-rounded receiver skill set. I think he can run most routes. I do think, though, he is at his best with the football in his hands and is someone who you're going to want to manufacture touches for fairly early on. And I definitely see a role for him in some capacity in our offense as early as next year. I think the athletic traits and the quickness with the ball in his hands is really impressive. Rakeem Dirth from Fort Myers, Florida, in Dunbar High School. It's us, Florida, and Florida State. Where have I seen this before? It's the exact teams competing for Edebali, which is kind of funny. Rakeem Dirth is also a Florida guy. He is also a bigger guy at 6'3", 203. Now, his archetype is contested specialist, so that tells me, at least in comparison to Edebali, he is probably a little bit worse as a route runner. His separation rating and his release rating is roughly around the same, which, being in the 80s for someone on that size, I think is really impressive for a true freshman. I don't quite think he's as polished as Edebali is, being a true receiver, but I think maybe the speed is probably going to be a little bit faster, so I think there might be more long-term athletic upside with Rakeem Dirth. Matthew Jackson, I think, to me, is a jack-of-all-trades, pros pro. We have the lead on him. Oklahoma and USC have both recently entered the race. I want to get out of this battle as soon as I can. We're going to go hard for him, over these next couple of weeks. From Queen Creek, Arizona, and Perry High School, a football and basketball powerhouse that has brought out the names of guys like Brock and Chuba Purdy, Jalen and Cody Williams, Koa Pete as well. Jackson is solid size. I think he's probably the second best route runner we have on the board, maybe even the best. But I think he's right up there with Skylar Matlock, and I think he might be the most polished guy here other than Matlock. He plays with physicality. He's got great physicality at the catch point, and I think he's pretty fast as well. He really checks off pretty much every box for me. Marquise Tyree from Atlanta, Georgia, and the Lovett School is the 6th and final receiver here. No scholarships yet, but again, I imagine that'll change pretty soon. He's a smaller guy. He's probably going to be at his best, I would say, in the slot early on. I don't know if he has the physicality to hang on the outside. Honestly, I'd be kind of intrigued to see a team put him at running back because I don't necessarily think he's got the route tree down yet, but he's a natural with the football in his hands. So I definitely think there are some creative ways you could use him, whether it's at receiver, particularly in the slot, or in the backfield. I hope wherever he lands, hopefully it's us, but wherever it is, I hope it's with a creative offensive coordinator who's able to use him in a lot of different ways. We only have one tight end currently on the board, and it's a very close race with Antoine Hinish from Greensboro Day High School in Greensboro, North Carolina. We have the lead. We had him visit in week 5. Honestly, the visit didn't go very well. I wish we had him come in this week during the bye week, but instead he's visiting East Carolina. If he has a good visit with the Pirates, then this recruiting battle could get a little bit dicey. 6'6", 260 pounds, and for somebody who's his size, I'm really excited about the combination of speed, 81, and strength, 78. He's really quick. He's really strong. He's got the athletic traits you look for in a high-end power conference starter, but I think his skill set is fairly raw overall. He's not a great route runner yet. His hands are okay, but not great. He's not a very good blocker either, but I think given the size and strength, he can easily get there, and with the athleticism, I could definitely see him being a weapon with the ball in his hands in the long term. We only have one offensive tackle, and we only have 5 offensive linemen on the board total, which might seem low, given that our offensive line has struggled against great teams this year. However, I mean, for one thing, we lost out on a lot of the battles earlier in the year on the offensive line. But also, I think we've recruited really well here. We have Dante Diamont, who's a senior, but otherwise, Kingston Carter at left tackle, he's got 2 more years of eligibility. Gage McKillop has 2 more. Noah Filmatoa has 3. Malcolm Boone will have 4. Harrison Hammonds is a good starter at left guard. We've got him for 2 more years. Javon McLeod struggled this year. We had him go from a day 1 starter to a red shirt, but he'll have 4 more years of eligibility, and he has elite development. At center, Miles Burner will have 3 more years, and we still have Scott Heitman, who's a solid veteran. So I do think the offensive line in the long term is in a pretty good spot. I really like Leonard Selzner, the left tackle from Sterling, Virginia, and Potomac Falls High School. Teammates with the running back, Javante Montague. I think this guy could start for us next year. But it's also not looking good. Clemson is really gaining on us. I just don't see a world where it happens. And I would rather cut my losses now than continue to invest in him. So the new tackle we have on the board, not as good as Selzner in the short term, but maybe we can develop this young man instead. Keenan Berlin from Olive Branch, Mississippi. He is currently playing for Lewisburg High School. 6'4", 290, pretty solid size. He is a pass protector archetype, which is certainly what I'm looking for on the offensive line at tackle, either left or right. You need guys who can get on an island one-on-one with a talented, explosive edge rusher. There have been plenty of those in the ACC in recent years. Look at Duke last year with Cabal Monroe, who was a top 3 pick. You need someone who can get on an island and manage those guys, and I think Keenan Berlin has a solid combination of foot speed, athleticism, and obviously his ability in pass pro. I think our roster currently has more depth at tackle than along the interior at either guard or center, which is why I've prioritized the interior a little bit more. We've got 2 4-star guards on the board, including Terrence Griffin, a local kid from Virginia Beach, Virginia, and Ocean Lakes High School. Penn State and Tennessee both are also in the race. Penn State seems especially interested, and they can certainly out-recruit us, so I'm hoping that we can continue to chug along in this battle. We're going to give him a lot of points pretty much the rest of the way because I really want him. 6'4", nearly 310 pounds. He's got elite size. He's got NFL size as an 18-year-old freshman. He's another guy who's really good in pass protection and I think improving in the run game. There's a lot of interest for Braden Keys, a 4-star from Flushing, New York, and St. Anthony's High School with Maryland, Syracuse, Penn State, Boston College, all power conference schools, all in the mix. We've got a little bit of a lead for Keys, though, and I'm hoping we'll be able to really start to run away with this battle in the coming weeks. I'm definitely going to have him come in for a visit soon because we know someone like Penn State below us could easily out-recruit us. Well-rounded, he's a little bit smaller than Griffin, so I think that certainly hurts his floor. He'll have some broken up to do possibly, but he doesn't really have many other weaknesses otherwise. He checks off a lot of the boxes on film. Casey Acho from Fort Pierce, Florida is another guy I've really got my eye on. 6'5", around 290 pounds. He's got solid size, I think, for a 3-star. Again, I wouldn't mind seeing him add a little bit more weight. Pass protecting archetype. We have struggled in the passing game along the interior offensive line. Look at that Texas Tech game where their defensive tackles ran through us. So getting guards who can pass block, I think, will really be helpful for us. And then we move over to center where we currently have 2. And I like both of these guys a lot. We'll start with Jason Hardison, neck and neck race. North Carolina's kind of in it, but it's really us and NC State. The Wolfpack just passes for the lead, but he's visiting this week during the bye week. So I'm hoping the visit goes well enough to where we can pass NC State, take the lead, and we're close enough to the finish line to where that could be the final boost for us. From Statesville, North Carolina, and South Iredell High School, Hardison is a pretty solid skill set across the board. He's certainly someone who's at his best in power. It is not easy to get by him just with brute strength. Now, if you've got a wide array of pass rush moves, particularly speed moves, then yeah, he might be in a little trouble, and because of that, he's not as polished as you would hope for from a 4-star, but I really like the upside with him. And then John Awuzie, we're starting to go after him a little bit faster with Louisville and East Carolina, 2 teams who we're about to play against, interested in him. Awuzie is the 307th highest ranked player in the country. That's middle of the road for our board. I think this is a top 5 player we have on our recruiting board. I think this guy is awesome. He is going to be ready to play right away, in my opinion. He doesn't really have many major weaknesses. He can block for the pass. He can block for the run. He can block faster, twitchier edge rushers, but he can also block power guys. Oh, that's not to mention that he's 6'4", 320 pounds. The Shelby, North Carolina, and Shelby High School star I think, could easily be one of the best players on our offensive line as soon as next year. I really believe he's one of the very best players on the board, and he's not getting the proper credit for it because he's an offensive lineman. He's a center. Let's move over to the D-line. We have 5 edge rushers, which is less than last year. Remember, we got a lot of edge rushers to commit, which makes it all the more disappointing that our edge room this year has been kind of mediocre. We went after some guys in the transfer portal, and it's been mixed results. Quincy Akindele has not been as good as I had hoped. Leon Cashman and Emmanuel DeRougy haven't been bad, but I wouldn't say they've been good either. I would argue Kawan Stewart's been our best edge rusher this year, and then you look at all these freshmen. Jalen Hunter, I'm super excited about. Stephen Feenan was a high recruit. Niles Coldclaw was, I believe, our number 1 ranked recruit in the class last year, top 50 guy. And then as we move to defensive tackle, Roylan Mathis is good. Braylon White is good, but we need to prepare for the future after them. Ross Daniels, I think, can play, but that's one. That's not really enough. So we'll start at edge. Ross Spielman, the lowest ranked of the group. He's only a 3-star, but I still think he's talented. From Archbishop Spalding in Severn, Maryland. 6'2", 253. This is a guy who I don't think is going to come in and produce right away, but I like the traits. He's strong, he's fast, he's quick, and he's big. And I think at the edge spot, you're looking for guys who maybe don't have the best production, but have the traits and have the tools to where in 2 or 3 years he could be really good. Alfonso Hayden, to me, is a little bit of a tweener. I do like him, though. Clemson seems to like him more, though. So if we want to get in on this battle, we're going to have to move a little bit faster. And speaking of moving fast, that's exactly what Hayden does. He is a prototypical speed rusher. He's only 6'2", 216, though. I kind of see him as a tweener and a guy who could be a candidate for a position change. I think, really, he's probably going to be at his best more of as like a blitzing Will or Sam linebacker or something. I don't think he's going to be good enough in coverage to be an every down linebacker, but he's certainly not big enough and certainly not good enough in the run game, at least not yet, to be a defensive lineman. Maybe he adds weight. Vi Hasty from Mount Dora, Florida, in Orlando Christian Prep is a very popular player. He's visiting us during the bye week. We're hoping it goes well. Florida State has the lead. There are a few other schools interested. 6'5", 220. He's also skinny, but I think he has more room to grow into his frame compared to Hayden being 6'5", with long arms. So I'm a little less worried about his size being a problem, especially considering he's already quite strong as is, and he's a good enough run defender to go along with the fact that he's got really impressive power, and his speed to power is really impressive. I like Colin Jennings a lot, the cousin of former Kansas edge rusher Seth Jennings. Seth, of course, played with Cornell Teamer. Cornell Teamer's dad, Cornell Teamer Sr., is the head coach here at Virginia Tech. So with all those pieces connecting together, that makes you think that we could have a good opportunity to get Jennings, and we are in second place. The problem is Texas A&M is in a good spot. Unlike the tackle, Selzner, I'm going to keep him on the board, and I think we're going to take the risk and have him come Week 8 against East Carolina. There's a chance he commits to Texas A&M this week, but I'm hoping we can kind of hang on Lauren enough for dear life, and the visit goes well next week because I really like him. 6'6", nearly 240 pounds. He might be the most athletic defensive lineman in this class, despite being one of the biggest. Speed, strength, both really impressive, but I don't think he's completely raw as a pass rusher, and because of that, I think he would be able to find the field for us on day one. Jabu Banogu from River Rouge, Michigan, and River Rouge High School. I think he's a little bit more different than Hasty and Jennings. I don't think he's quite as polished as those guys. 6'3", 220. He's a little undersized, so he's going to need to add some weight. But again, I think he's got a pretty good build. I think he's got pretty long arms. I'm not that worried about his size being a problem in the long term because I do think that he can get bigger for us. But at that size, I don't know if you're going to be able to hold up in the ACC with our tough schedules immediately as a freshman. Let's kick it inside now. We're hoping for 2.5 more years of Roylan Mathis and 3.5 more years of Ross Daniels. But again, I want to be prepared for anything. We'll start with Hugh Wolf from Crew, Virginia, a local guy playing at Nottoway High School. A lot of teams want him, but I think it's going to be a three-way race with Maryland and North Carolina. The Terps are the favorite, but I think if we start to go after him a little bit harder, we could land him. 6'2", 296, good run defender who doesn't really offer a lot as a pass rusher. Honestly, I think the best course of action for him is just to be continuing to gain weight, add like 30 or 40 pounds, and just go all in on being a nose tackle, a gap stuffer, a guy who's maybe not going to put up the big numbers as a pass rusher, but clog rushing lanes and create opportunities for others. I think that's where Hugh Wolf can be successful. Ahmad Muhammad from Dillon High School in Dillon, South Carolina, 6'2", 291. I definitely see him as more of a potential pass rushing option, especially in terms of his quickness and his get-off. 87 finesse moves. I think he's got a little bit more upside than Wolf does, but I think Hugh Wolf also has a very clear niche role that he can fit to immediately, whereas with Ahmad Muhammad, there needs to be a little bit more of development. It's going to be probably Uzzer Clemson. Clemson's not offered him a scholarship yet, but I don't want them to, and then for them to pass as quickly, so we're probably going to try to go after him pretty fast still. Let's move over to linebacker. We have 4 this year, not as many as last year. We've recruited very well at linebacker over the last couple of years, so we didn't really need to make it a priority this season. Now we have Corbin Rowland, the best world, couple of upperclassmen. Omani Hicken will be an upperclassman next year, but then after that, it's young guys. Nathan Grimes has been awesome this year. KJ Story's gotten some reps. And then we've got all these true freshmen with Darrell Evanson, RJ Jordan, Chester Ream, and Lawrence Rossi. At least 1 or 2 of those guys are going to hit. So because of that, I think we're in a really good spot at linebacker over the next couple of years. But again, I still wanted to go after some guys anyway. I still want to prepare for anything. So we'll start with Emilio Magana from Avon, Indiana. And I think he's a guy who older fans and older scouts can appreciate, because I feel like the linebacker position in college and in the NFL has gotten smaller. It's gotten faster. It's gotten quicker. It's gotten better in coverage. Emilio Magana is more of an old school guy. He's 6'4", 230. He's got good size. He is physical in the run game, but he's really smart. He's instinctive, and he is a good cover player. And I think his well-roundedness at his size make him really intriguing. Marco Morrison from Fort Pierce, Florida. He's playing at Blinn College, a JUCO. Blinn has produced a lot of notable names. Recently, guys like Danny Gray, Mike Green, Xavier Hutchinson, D.D. Westbrook. Going back a little bit, does Cam Newton ring a bell perhaps? 6'1", 230. He's not as tall as Magana, but another guy who I think just has natural feel and football instincts in coverage. Pretty good in the run game. Let's move over to Mike linebacker now. We've got a couple of guys. We'll start with Alex Madu. He is from Union, Kentucky and Ryle High School. He's definitely an old school physical thumping type. Stanford has recently entered the battle for him. But again, as I mentioned, he's a little bit undersized. He's only 6 foot. And when you look at guys who are, thick and physical and thumping types, you would hope he's a little bit taller than 6 foot. That's going to limit what he can do in coverage, because it's going to be easier for tight ends to catch passes over him. It'll be easier when he's trying to pursue through offensive linemen, because, there's less mass that the lineman is trying to block. So the fact that he is a little bit undersized at a linebacker archetype, where it certainly helps you to be bigger, that's not ideal. But he's physical, he's tough, he's a character program kid. Coaches rave about him. I still believe in him a lot, and is a guy I would certainly still be interested in. Noah McAdam from Missouri City, Texas, and Elkins High School is up next. He is also listed as a thumper. He's a little bit bigger, though. He's around 6'2". I think he's good in zone coverage. I don't think he's very good in man yet. I think he has a hard time with tight ends, because I think he needs to improve on his physicality. I think he can get there, though. He's impressive in the run game. He's tough. He's smart, and I think he could be a good player. We'll wrap things up in the secondary. We've got 6 defensive backs here. And as I mentioned with wide receiver, I think the DB room has been good this year. But it's older, and we need to prepare for some new faces. Elihu Gold is one of our best players, but he only has 6-7 games left here. He's a senior. Smoke Lewis, Caleb Fleming, Samson Abbott, all may very well return next year, but we still need to prepare for life after them. I'm excited about Ian Cloud, the 4-star freshman. I do want to get him some more on-field reps. And then safety. We're good at starter, at least, with Justice Watkins and Colby Cook, but this is a team who plays 3-4 safeties. Mitch Myries obviously played a lot. We got him in the transfer portal. I think he's been by far our second-best portal addition this year, other than Chris Mickens. I think he's been really good. We've got some young guys I like. Mario Berkovici, I think, is on the verge of being good. And then we recruited a lot of 3-stars last year, but I don't know if any of those guys are necessarily going to be ready to contribute next year. So we'll start at corner. We'll start with George Ikubin from Hyattsville, Maryland, and DeMatha Catholic High School, a football and basketball powerhouse. This is a very close race with Uz and Maryland neck and neck. We have the lead, though. I think we're going to get him, and I think it's going to be soon. 6'1", 200 pounds. He really does not have many major weaknesses to me. I think he could play for us very early on. He's reasonably fast. He's very good at man coverage, solid in zone. He can play the slot. He can play the outside. He's got good enough ball skills. And I'm hoping his visit this week will ultimately be enough to ice the deal and get him to join us. Ahmad Logan from LaSalle High School in Pasadena, California. He's an interesting case because I like him a lot. 6 foot, 200 pounds, very talented corner. But we don't fit his deal breaker of playing style. And we're not very close to fitting it. It's a C+. We're all the way down at a D-. Maybe the bye will help us out. But for now, we would have a lot of work to do. Oklahoma State, though, is really the only team who's going after him super hard. So let's say we get that deal breaker up in 2 or 3 weeks. I still think there's a chance we could get him. Tevin Teague from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and Bishop Kenneth High School. 5'10", 186, a little bit undersized, but he's tough. He's gritty. I think early on, you probably want him in the slot, matched up with, smaller slot receivers. I think his short area quickness will be able to handle that, and he's played well, as you can see here in the slot, throughout high school. We certainly hope maybe he could be an outside corner one day, but at the very least, I think you're looking at someone who can provide value inside. And then Ty Jackson from Norcross, Georgia, and Norcross High School. Alvin Kamara went there, longtime Detroit Lions starter at left tackle. Jeff Bacchus went there. 5'9", 167. He is small. I think the best way to describe that game is that he's got that dog in him. He plays like the toughest guy on the field. He plays like he wants it more than anybody on the field. He's the most physical player on the field. And at corner, at times that can be a little bit of a problem. Handsy, pass interference, stuff like that. But you can tell he kind of plays with a chip on his shoulder because of the lack of size he has. And I think he's trying to use it to his advantage, per se, by using it to motivate him to continue to get better. And he's a guy who I certainly like quite a bit. We've got 2 safeties here. We'll start with Taylor Dukes from Chandler, Arizona, and Mesquite High School. We've got a few Arizona players on the board this year, and that's after last season our highest-ranked recruit, Niles Colclaw, came from Arizona. Dukes is a 6'1", 212-pound Swiss Army knife. I don't necessarily think he's going to be a true center field, cover one, free safety right away, but he lines up all over the defense, slot corner, outside corner, sub linebacker. They've put him at edge for a couple snaps as well. A versatile player who can do a little bit of everything. He has a knack for the football. Where the ball is, it seems like that's where he is. He's a very natural, but also very willing tackler. The last player we're going to talk about today is Justice Klutz from Cincinnati, Ohio, and St. Xavier High School, the alma mater of Luke Kuechly and Sean Clifford. 5'11", 197. He, I believe, is probably more of your cover type safety, but he's got the versatility to play the box as well. He's a little bit smaller than Dukes, so I don't know if he'll be able to primarily play in the box or primarily play at corner in the next level because he's not the athlete, and he's smaller than Dukes is. But I think he's a little bit more natural in terms of his coverage ability, and I'd be curious to see what he would look like at free safety. So that is our recruiting board. Now, that doesn't mean we're going to get all of these guys. I think what we would expect is, in an ideal world, we get around half of these players. We're probably going to add some more 3-stars by the end of the year, and then certainly the transfer portal. We went hard after the portal last year, and we're going to do so again. I would say this year we probably are going to put a little bit more focus, though, on getting younger guys in the portal, because last year we really focused on upperclassmen, and while we've gotten good contributions from guys like Mickens and Mitch Myrie, I still would like to add some younger guys there as well. So I have 115 points left over. That's because I need them for my 4 Week 8 visits. I have not scheduled anybody to come after Week 7 yet because I knew a lot of these battles were going to be close, so I wanted to be strategic with who and when is visiting each game. Right now, we have 7 players who we can choose between from, as I mentioned earlier, with Colin Jennings. I know it's looking slim. This is the only chance that we can get him, and I think unlike Selzner, I do believe there is like the slightest of slight chances we make it work. We're going to give Braden Keys, the guard, a visit. There's a lot of teams who want him. We have the lead, but I want to make sure it happens. Quarterback Matthew Shelley, I said he's going to come soon. How about next week? Ole Miss is entering the picture. Georgia Tech has the lead. We would need a lot of work with him. And then after that, I thought about all of these receivers. Originally, I was going to pick Kaufman, but I actually think Matthew Jackson makes the most sense because there's 2 teams right now that want Jackson, Oklahoma and USC. What if they offer weeks 8 and 9? Then we're completely screwed. With Kaufman, there's really only one team, Missouri, so it would be a lot harder for things to completely mess up in that regard. Even if Mizzou offers him a visit, we could just easily put it towards the next week or the following week or into our Week 10 bye week with Kaufman. So I'm not overly worried about him. Those other guys I'm hoping we'll get visits in for. Certainly Matlock. I decided against it week 8. I think we're going to do it either week 9 or 10. But we also have to recognize that there are going to be a lot of guys here who have 8 teams left who are going to narrow their list down to 5. And because of that, that means that they're going to want visits. So we're going to have to be smart with which players we choose. We're going to have to be pretty selective in that regard. But again, that is our recruiting class. We do not have any commitments yet, but once more, I expect that to change relatively soon. Hopefully we get some good news as we stimulate the week with guys like Colin Jennings, who may very well just end up going elsewhere. Antoine Hinish visits this week. George Akubin visits this week. Jason Hardison visits this week. So a lot of important ones during our bye week. The staff certainly will have their work cut out for them. Let's go through some notable games here across the nation in Week 7. We've got some fun ones, in my opinion. The biggest one is certainly Texas and Ohio State. The Longhorns go to the shoe. Bryce Carver, possible first-round pick this year. There's his Malachi Nelson, who scouts really like in the long term. Stanford, Notre Dame. Washington, Penn State's going to be a great game. I've spoken very glowingly about Washington. I think they're one of the best 10 teams in the country. I think at the end of the year, when it's all said and done, they will be a playoff team, and I think that starts today by beating Penn State. I would love to be wrong and laugh at them. Let's simulate the week. Let's hope we get some good news on the recruiting trail, and boy, do we. George Ibukin, our first commit, the 4-star from Hyattsville, Maryland, and DeMatha Catholic High School. This is a big get for us. He's like the 2nd or 3rd highest ranked player on the entire board, right on the fringe of top 100. So this is a guy who's really, really good. This is a big win for us in the secondary. Otherwise, though, not a great week recruiting-wise. We'll start with the elephant in the room. Colin Jennings is going to Texas Tech. We wasted the 40 points on the visit. That is unfortunate. Antoine Hinish, we have fallen behind East Carolina. The Pirates had a good visit in Week 7. It's going to be close. It'll go down to a recruiting battle. Matthew Jackson's visiting this week. Matthew Shelley's visiting this week. Braden Keys is visiting this week. And the battles for others like Matlock, Hasty, and Logan are all winding down. We've got the lead down to 3 with our biggest target, Matlock. We'll start with the biggest game of the week at the shoe. Number 1, undefeated, the world-famous Ohio State Buckeyes against the Longhorns of Texas. They didn't look so world-famous in this game. Texas, in overtime, knocks off the number 1. A gutsy late-game performance from Texas quarterback Bryce Carver, who didn't even play that good of the game, yet they still won. This Texas team is for real. For Ohio State, I'm concerned about the floor. Malachi is just not an accurate quarterback whatsoever. He can make the big throws. He's good on the run. But I do feel like these inaccuracies are really hurting his teammates. Demir Savage, he was seen as a surefire first-round pick going into the year. Now not so much. Through the air, Texas struggled to score. They only had 19 points in regulation. Carver wasn't very good. But when the chips were on the line, he made plays. He responded to adversity and led Texas to a win over the number 1 team in the shoe. So that opens the door for SMU, theoretically, to be number 1. Now, Boston College has had some good games this year. Ohio State's the only team they lost to. And, well, this certainly was not as dramatic as the game we just saw going into overtime. SMU wins it 45-34. They are your new number 1. I thought Rasheed Stewart played a good game, though. 2 touchdowns, 300 yards, 0 interceptions, or 0 sacks. But it just was not enough for SMU. 3 more touchdowns for Tyree Wells. I will say, though, I think his accuracy's been a little disappointing this year. And I think comparing him to guys like Kieran Riddle and Zarius Stone would probably get the edge, given that both of them are better under structure. They're both better runners. They're both more accurate, of course. But otherwise, Tyree Wells has been great this year, and he's orchestrating an unbelievable offense where there are great players left and right. But obviously, he still deserves responsibility because he's the one getting them the ball. Damon Easter, the sophomore running back, has been awesome. Travis Fowles finally played really well. Parker Zasco, quiet game for his standards, but he still scored. Number 10, Penn State to Happy Valley, facing off against the University of Washington. UW. Oh, more like UL today, because Penn State ended up knocking off these Huskies in a really good one. 41-36, your final. Good throw into the end zone there for a touchdown by the true freshman quarterback, Bugs Vitelli, who's shown some good, some bad, and some ugly this year, but I think overall, he's been pretty impressive. 2 tubs, no picks, no sacks, over 60% completion percentage. You will gladly take that for a true freshman playing in the biggest game of his collegiate career. As for the Huskies, they certainly did not lose this game because of their offense. 32 points should be enough to win. Paul Green Jr. played well again, but the defense, which has been really good this year, was definitely not as good. I think maybe we need to tone down the playoff hype for this Washington team, but also still recognize that they're going to be a good starter this year. USC versus Nebraska. This is a big litmus test for the Cornhuskers. Where are you against a great team? Well, their offense and their defense are on completely different wavelengths. The defense is 5 seconds ahead, but the offense is 10 seconds back. When you factor that in, with turning the ball over a lot, 5 interceptions, and 8 sacks for the true freshman quarterback, Chaz Carrington, it'll be hard to win. 1.5 yards a carry for Samario Harold. That is not good. USC's offense wasn't good either, though. Jackson picked off twice, sacked twice, wasn't very accurate. USC won this game because of their defense. They were great. Who would have thought a matchup with an SEC team and a group of 5 team would be probably the most important of the week? Yet here we are. Ole Miss has lost twice. They cannot afford to lose again. USF has already lost once. If they lose twice, though, that really hurts their resume in terms of the playoff rankings. Now, USF did score 42. Their world-renowned offense showed up. Their defense did not show up. 42-56, your final big win for Ole Miss. Galeo Barron wasn't great, but certainly bounced back. Cedric Carter might as well buy real estate in the end zone at this point. He had 5 touchdowns, and then the receivers were solid. Quieter game for Amar Simpkins, but to me, he really does look like the part of a first-round pick. He is amazing. Josh Scarborough, 465 yards, 5 touchdowns, normal day in the office. Picked off twice, though, and sacked multiple times. Stanford and Notre Dame, couple of arch rivals facing off against each other. This was a huge game towards the end of last year. Notre Dame basically had to win it to keep their playoff hopes alive, and to their credit, they did. Both of these teams are worse, though. Stanford is not their playoff caliber team last year. I'm not so sure Notre Dame is either. I say I'm not so sure, though, because they certainly looked like it today. Dominant blowout win over SMU, 56-14. Maxwell Logan, really solid game. He didn't really have to do much after the first quarter because everybody was up by so much. On the ground, Amari Blue scores 4 times. Stanford's definitely been disappointing this year, obviously losing Isaiah Timpf and Lonnie Block to the top half of the first round. I wouldn't be totally shocked to see a quarterback change here at some point. They did invest a lot in getting Solomon Sifu out of the transfer portal, who had a great freshman year at Hawaii. Unexpectedly lost the job, but I certainly could see him getting it back. Across the country, Hokie and LSU are now ranked at number 25. They beat Miss State. Georgia with a fairly convincing win over Kentucky. Miami blows out Syracuse. Clemson blows out Cal. You can see the top echelon of the ACC really showing there. Oklahoma over Texas A&M. Another good game from Wyatt Cruz. A&M looked good. NC State is ranked. They beat Duke. Arguably an upset there. Memphis is now ranked in the top 10, and they have sole comfortable possession of that first playoff spot. Obviously, they still got to play well through the second half of the season, but they're looking good. In the ACC, Florida State with a close win over Pitt. North Carolina passes their win total from last year. They are 5-0. Virginia, 5 wins. Granted, an unconvincing win. They squeaked away from Georgia Southern at home, but hey, a win's a win. They have 2 more than us, so I guess we can't really judge. And then in terms of some scores across the rest of the country, we had a high-scoring shootout, non-conference game in Vanderbilt. UConn took it 38-36 over Vanderbilt with a game-winning touchdown by wide receiver Kodak Hawk. That's not actually true. I just made that up. But there's a lot of lore in the Discord server. The link is in the description if you want to make a player for next season. That is where to do it. Middle Tennessee State is now ranked number 19. Cincinnati with a nice win over Iowa State. Wisconsin over Rutgers. Good win for the Badgers. Tulsa, who was ranked this week, gets blown out by North Texas 48-9. Good Lord. Texas Tech remains undefeated. They beat Colorado in a low-ish scoring game. James Madison with a nice win, 45-0 over ULM. And then Michigan wins game 1 of the Case and Wood era, 35-16 against Northwestern. Wood was adequate. He wasn't good, but I wouldn't say he was bad per se either. Northwestern is not a great team, so I guess there's really not much to go off of there. As we take a look at our current rankings, SMU and Miami hold the top 2 spots. Georgia and Michigan are climbing up. Even though Georgia lost a game and Michigan lost a quarterback, they're ahead of Texas Tech now, which I don't agree with. I think Texas Tech should be at minimum in the top 3. Illinois 6, Ohio State drops to 7. If you're going to put Ohio State and Texas right next to each other, you might as well put Texas ahead of them because, Texas beat them. NC State, LSU, both enter the rankings. They will replace Tulsa and somebody else, but it didn't show. As for the players of the week, obviously we cannot win any because we didn't play. Coming off a week in Week 6 where Mitch Myrie won the National Defensive Player of the Week. But ultimately the winners are Dwayne Michaels for Nebraska and Dante Shepard, the young receiver at Illinois. Nick Winton and Kasim President with North Carolina both win it in the ACC. President, one of the top defensive players in the portal last year. Winton, talented sophomore receiver. We got to see how good firsthand he is, and we'll get to see again in 2 weeks. Zausko, despite a quieter game, holds on to his lead for the Heisman. Tyree Wells and Brian Maddie swap, and that's it. Not a lot of movement. Here in Week 7, just a couple of switches outside of the top 5. So with that, we get set for Week 8. In the next episode, we return home. We're playing against East Carolina. We've got a bunch of guys visiting this week. We'll be setting up a bunch of visits over the next couple of weeks. ECU is a team who I've been eyeing up as a potential schedule option. They're a fun squad, obviously led by Julian Hero, undersized but talented quarterback who was a Heisman frontrunner for most of the year last year. Should he have been? No, I'm not really sure what this game's obsession with him was, but it'll still be fun to see him nonetheless. Hope you guys enjoyed. Make sure to leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you're new. Let me know which recruit was your favorite down below in the comments. Peace out.